You may have noticed while you were walking around your town that you can just walk right out of the bounds of the town and off the screen. That's clearly not something we want, so we're going to come up with a solution that's very simple and visual. To do this, open up the Assets folder that came with this tutorial. Go into Sprites, User Interface, and there will be a pale magenta sprite called SPR_block. Drag that into your Assets browser. Back in GameMaker Studio 2, we want to create a new object with this. If your sprite is already open, you can go ahead and close it. We don't need to do anything else with this. I'm just going to make some room, right-click, choose Create, Object. And I'm going to rename this obj_block. I'll click on No Sprite and choose that new magenta sprite that I just imported. And then I'm going to click on Parent, and where it says No Object, let's click again and choose that environment parent object that we created, obj_par_environment. This way, this new block will have the exact same effect as all the other environmental objects, which means that our player can check for it, because in the step code, we wrote this collision code. With our block objects ready, we can start placing them in our room and prevent the player from going out of bounds. So open up your room game main. If you don't have it open at the top, you can always find it in your asset browser. And go over to the layers section of the room editor. We currently have 3 layers: instances, tiles main, and background. And we actually want to create a new layer just for these barriers, just to keep ourselves organized. So in the layers editor, you can choose create new instance layer, and that will create a new layer. And I'm just going to right click on it and rename it and call it blocks. Make sure this is at the top of the layer stack. If it's not, if it's down here or somewhere else, you can always click and drag it around, and GameMaker Studio 2 will give you little indications of whether you're putting it above or below another layer. Just make sure it's at the top. With that done, make sure you have the blocks layer selected. We've got nothing on here right now, which is what we expect. And let's drag in 4 instances of obj_block. It doesn't matter where you put them because we're going to move them immediately. So drag them in, and each of these is going to become one of the 4 invisible walls that will keep our player in bounds. So I'm going to grab this one here, and I'm going to drag it to the top left of my room. And as we've seen before, we can edit the shapes of objects. Before I told you not to edit them and make sure you're not dragging, say, a barrel sprite or something else, making it look weird by stretching it. But now that's actually what we want to do. So if you grab on one of the corners, you'll see that you can stretch it this way. You can also just grab a node in the middle, stretch it horizontally or vertically, and you can always double click on it and change the values manually. I'm going to just go ahead and stretch it because we don't need to be precise. And I'm just going to make this left wall about there. We can always adjust it later. And I'm going to repeat this for the other 4 walls. Drag that one there. Maybe move that down a little bit. It's okay if they overlap. And you'll see the reason we made this sprite a transparent magenta was just to help us see what we were doing in here. Again, it's nice to be doing something visual instead of just coding all the time. And I'm dragging the right wall over there. About there is probably okay. So once you've got this, let's go ahead and run the game again. And let's try to escape the confines of our town. What you should see is that I can't move beyond those invisible barriers. If you've ever studied game design or have heard the concept of an invisible wall, this is exactly what that is. It's an object that we can't move past. And because this is a parent object, we didn't have to write any more code, so it's nice and simple. If things aren't quite working out, you might need to go ahead and adjust those blocks in your room editor. But once you're happy, you can go ahead and close the game window and return to GameMaker Studio 2.